Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Q2 FY22 results conference call of Arman Financial Services, hosted by Emkay Global Financial Services. We have with us today Mr. Jayendra Patel, Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Alok Patel, Joint Managing Director, and Mr. Vivek Modi, Group CFO. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star, then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Manjeet Nair from Emkay Global Financial Services. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Hi, this is Manjeet here. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome the management team and thank them for this opportunity. I shall now hand over the call to the management for their opening remarks. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Manjeet Bhai. Jayendra Bhai here, Managing Director of the company. And I would like to, first of all, say good evening, everyone, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us over this call to discuss our financial performance for the second quarter and half year ended FY22. We have issued a detailed press release and investor presentation for the quarter, and I hope all of you had a chance to review it. I will start with a brief overview of the industry and business during the last quarter, and then we'll move to our financial performance. The quarter was marked by a rebound in rural economy along with the improving consumer sentiments and unlocking of most geographies post the second wave of COVID-19. Our cautious approach and conviction along with the experiences gained during the 2020 lockdowns helped us navigate smoothly through the challenging times. With the vaccination programs organized by the company across locations, majority of our employees are vaccinated, which will enable smooth running of operations in future and more closer customer interaction. As I have said in the past, our customers have a tendency to bounce back fast. This was clearly seen during the last quarter with the rise in collection and improved disbursement on the back of pickup in demand. Moreover, continued government support towards NBFCs and various relief packages for the revival of economy in the form of loan guarantee schemes, ECLGS and MSME revival schemes will surely bring the economy back on track. I will now give a brief overview of our financial performance for the second quarter and post that touch upon liquidity, disbursement and collections in more detail. Coming to the brief overview of our financial performance for the quarter. Consolidated loan book as on 30th September stands at rupees 908 crores, higher by 29% year over year. Substantial reduction in COVID-19 cases and unlocking of economy across most geographies led to higher AUM growth. Segmented AUM for microfinance stood at 742 crores, higher by 42% Y-on-Y, and MSME stood at 125 crores, higher by 5%, while two-wheeler stands at rupees 42 crores, down by 33% Y-on-Y, as two-wheeler sales declined in the last 1 year given the challenging economic environment. That coupled with higher repayment rates led to a rundown in the portfolio. Consolidated loan disbursement during Q2 FY22 stood at 167 crores, up by 425% Y-on-Y, as the COVID situation started getting normalized and even the rural economy witnessed an uptick in demand. The total MSME and two-wheeler disbursement in Q2 were 35 crores and 11 crores respectively, while microfinance disbursement stood at 220 crores, higher by 469%, mainly due to back in rural economy post second wave and our increasing effort with the performance of the post-COVID disbursement asset quality. Gross total income fell down marginally by 2% Y-on-Y to 51 crores, and net total income declined by 6% year-on-year to 31 crores. Fall in gross income mainly due to the fall in interest margins on microfinance portfolio, as the yield on that portfolio is regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. Portfolio after tax increased by 220% Y-on-Y to 4.9 crores, aided by lower provisioning requirements due to better asset quality of loans dispersed post-COVID-19 since September 2020. Consolidated gross NPA stood at 5.6% and a net NPA stood at 1.1% for the September 21. Loan impairment cost of the quarter reduced to 8.7 crores. The company prudently took extra provisions of 4.1 crores and took write-offs of 4.6 crores. Higher provisioning coverage will help the company deal with potential asset quality risk arising on account of COVID-induced disruptions, while aggressive write-offs are aimed at reducing the NPA burden of pre-COVID doubtful assets. Cumulative total provision stood at 62.1 crore as on 30th September 21, covering 6.8% of the book AUM. The company enjoys healthy liquidity position with 147 crores in cash and bank balance, liquid investments and undrawn CC limits. The company has repaid all its debt obligations that were due in Q2 FY22 with debt equity ratio of 4.05x as on 30th September 21, and shareholders' equity stood at about 194 crores as on 30th September 21. ALM continues to remain positive, and the company continues to have access to new source of funds due to company's robust balance sheet and prudent lending practices. The company recently received a rating upgrade of A- from Equity with a stable outlook despite strong headwinds. I repeat, we are now into an A level of credit ratings, which I'm absolutely proud to announce that most of the NBFCs, most of the MFIs are not facing such a favorable wind. We are lucky to have our rating upgraded from BBB- to A-. So coming to the collections in microfinance business, which was impacted during Q1 FY22 due to second wave, has recovered consistently during the Q2 FY22. Collections were severely impacted mainly due to COVID second wave restrictions, since our collection executives were not able to visit door to door for recovery. However, with the easing of restrictions, there is steady recovery in collections in Q2 FY22. Post-COVID, disbursement loan book collection efficiency stands at 99%. I repeat again, post-COVID disbursement loan book collection efficiency stands at 99%, which I am very proud of it. I must say that whatever disbursement we have made post-COVID, we are enjoying absolutely 99% recovery rate. Collections picked up as the repayment rates reached 92% in October 2021 from 89% in July 2021. Two-wheeler and MSME collections continued to be well north of 95% during October 2021. Keeping in mind our long-term growth plans and to enhance the customer reach, we have planned expansion in our branch network from 250 branches as on September 21 to 291 branches by March 22. The company has already initiated recruitment process for the branch expansion. Going by our asset-light business model, the capex for the same will be minimal. We believe that we are on a strong footing looking at the buoyancy in the economy coupled with our strong balance sheet, adequate liquidity, capital, improved credit ratings, along with stronger relationship with our lenders, places us in the forefront of drive growth. We stand guided by our long-standing commitment of reaching the most underserved sections of the society and making a difference in the lives of those who need it the most. Our focus will be on scaling up disbursements in a calibrated manner to maximize revenue growth going ahead while keeping a closer watch on building profitability and maintaining the quality of our loan book. Arman, over the period, has faced many challenges from external environment in form of regulatory challenges, demonetization and COVID, and every time we have managed to emerge stronger. We thus feel that with the worst behind us, we are well poised to achieve a growth and harvest the benefits of fairer weather. We are optimistic about our future growth and earning potential and believe that we are well positioned and have a stronger foundation for the future, which can provide us sustainable and profitable growth for the long term. Finally, to conclude, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all our stakeholders for their continued support during these very difficult times, and a special note of appreciation for the company's field staff who continue to show perseverance during the difficult times. I now would request the operator to open the floor for the question and answer session. Thank you very much all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Reminder to the participants, anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1. The first question is from the line of Deepak Mehta, individual investor. Please go ahead. Deepak Mehta, your line is in talk mode.
Hello, good evening, sir. Thank you for the opportunity and good set of numbers. Sir, my question is around the SME segment. So, how is the traction in the recent quarter, and how do you see growth in the coming years and coming quarters?
The disbursement has of course picked up in the last quarter compared to the previous 3 or 4 quarters. So we have a run rate of about 15 crores of disbursement in a month. Of course, our target remains much larger. However, the underwriting has been kind of tightened since COVID, and we have not relaxed it. Probably in the fourth quarter, if we relax it, it will go up another 20-25%. But generally speaking, a lot of the growth for the coming quarters or year, I should say, will be through branch openings. So lot of, I think, as Jayendra said, we are opening some 40 odd branches in the microfinance segment in in December, January, and February timeframe. In about February and March also, we should be opening a lot of the MSME branches as well. So that disbursement hopefully should at least increase by 30 to 40% by Q1 of next year.
Okay, thank you, sir. And my second question is around, so a lot of companies, new companies, especially fintechs, are coming in the SME segment.
Correct.
Yeah. So if you see recently, Paytm has also tied up with HDFC Bank, and in the long term, in the con call of Paytm, they announced that they are willing to, get into the lending business through the route of HDFC Bank. So how do you see this space, or do you have any plan to tie up with fintech or to, launch any fintech kind of business?
No, I mean, we are not, I think it's a different product altogether. Although, I mean, I always say this, that MSME is a very, very broad term. It includes loans of 1 lakh rupees and it includes loans of 10 crore also sometimes. It includes urban loans and rural loans. So we are servicing a completely different market segment. The customers we service are not, I mean, not the target segment of the fintechs. The fintechs are more targeting the urban kind of higher educated, more formalized segment. So we don't really look at that, the emergence of the fintechs, as much of a threat on our model. But, as far as tie-ups or anything, I don't see how exactly there will be synergies, but if something does come up, I'm always open to any kind of a tie-up.
Thank you so much, sir. I will get in the queue, sir.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line on 3 from 2.2 Capital Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hello, Alok.
Hi, Amit.
Yeah, so just on credit costs, so what has been the percentage credit costs that Arman has incurred in the MFI and MSME business due to COVID so far?
On a I mean, you mean on a static pool? You mean on the current pool?
Pre-COVID book. Pre-COVID. So March 2020 book, basically.
So it will be, I think, 6 plus 3, about
approximately. The overall write-off that you would have done, Amit, for the pre-COVID book already, which has been taken off or written off, will turn out to be about 3.5%.
Correct.
And provisioning?
And then we have another 6.5% of provisioning. But that is on the current loan book.
I mean, which includes both the current as well as the pre-COVID book, which is part of the NPAs, So, I mean, to more get into the numbers again, so about 3.5% has already been written off. The provisions that lie in terms of 62 crores has approximately 40 crores of NPA provisions. Now, NPAs typically almost 90% of the NPAs that we have on the books are the pre-COVID book NPAs, which have become regular in terms of paying the installments over a period of time. Got a setback in November 2020, then again maybe the second wave again. So these people have shown the resilience, but have also got the consistency of their repayment has got hampered due to various circumstances, and they continue to be on the books, and they kind of are adequately provided at this point in time, if we can put it.
Okay. And we had done some restructuring. So how big is the restructured book and what is the provisions against that?
Yeah, so restructured book compared to today's portfolio will be very small now. It will be about less than 4% of the book will be.
No, not even 4%. I mean, the restructuring predominantly was for the microfinance book, wherein the restructuring was about 26 crores. That is in December 2020. I would not have the exact number, but
a large component of that has already been repaid or part of the NPA books and adequately provided for.
Okay. So this was in December, Amit. So and there was no further restructuring. So anybody who didn't start repayment will already be in NPA, right?
So with regards to second wave, you had not done any significant restructuring, is it?
No, there was no restructuring. There was for the ones that we could not reach out to in the microfinance segment and those who were standard assets, so SMA1. So those were like completely clean accounts as on March 31st. We did provide
moratoriums ranging from 1 month to
exactly. So
and that also limited only to the microfinance book. As far as the MSME and two-wheeler is concerned, there were no moratoriums or restructuring given to them in the second wave.
Or the first wave.
Or the first wave, yes.
Okay. And in the MSME book, the collections have been fairly good, consistently greater than 90%. But yet, that's the only segment of the book where the GNPAs have been rising. So can you explain that?
So couple of reasons. One is what I think Vivek already said is there was no restructuring, there was no moratorium or anything given on that book. Partly because there was sufficient kind of profits and stuff available to just kind of take all of that upfront. The second reasoning also is that if you look at the microfinance segment, there was a bit of a denominator impact where the portfolio has gone up significantly. In the MSME, it has been a little bit slower to move up. So on a percentage terms, it appears to be a little higher. We are still around pre-COVID levels when it comes to the overall portfolio of the MSME.
The AUM of MSME vis-a-vis the March 2020 is still at about 10% lower than March 2020. So the denominator that way is lower. And
okay. And now that we've started growing again and already debt to equity low time, so within next few quarters you might touch maybe 5 times debt to equity. So what's the plan now on raising equity for supporting this growth?
So we are obviously, I think, as I keep saying, it's no big secret. We are open to some equity kind of a dilution given the right opportunity. Right now, we are, as you said, about 4.05x debt to equity ratio. Basically, if you work yourself forward, we are good till about 1,200 crores worth of AUM. If you offload some of that as a DA transaction, in that case, and which there is at this point substantial interest to do that, maybe you can delay that a little longer. But so on September, we had an AUM of about 908 crores. So we have a few quarters before we absolutely need equity. So it's not in a rush, but yeah, in the next 3-4 quarters, probably some transaction or another will come along, especially once the sentiments improve around microfinance and that new white paper that comes out. I think that will add a lot of valuation kind of support towards an equity raise.
And on the now the credit costs provisioning has started coming down on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So is there further provisioning required on the pre-COVID book that was a challenge?
No, there will be some, but as you said, it will continue to trend down. I think the worst is behind us. Overall, the trend you will see in the coming quarters is, I don't want to give out any indicators, but let us say it will continue to go down in the coming quarters. As long as we can maintain the new book that we have created at 99% repayment, which touch wood, hopefully we should be able to. I don't foresee too much. It's not going to be zero, let me put it that way. But it will continue to trend downwards.
Sure. Okay. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mihir Desai from Desai Investments. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. So my question would be on branch banking. So as you've mentioned that you are planning to add some 40 odd branches in March by March 22. So can you throw some light on the roadmap of this? Like, can we see some few branches coming in Q3, or can you please throw some light on this?
Yeah, so it's a little premature, but overall, about approximately around 20% we are planning to open in December, and then about another 30 odd percent, 30 and 20 more in January, February and March. So by March we are hoping that all the openings will be completed. But that being said, in next week we are having like sort of a management retreat over 3 days to kind of decide which areas and what areas we want to expand on. So it's a bit premature to give you a definite on how many will exactly open, what parts of India will we tend to open it. 40 is basically an indicative number, but if we don't find that much potential, it might be less than that. If we find more, it might be a few more. So let's see.
Sure. Sir, a follow-up on this. As the banking industry as a whole is, looking at a digital growth, where many NBFCs and banks are, planning to cut down some of the branches which are, not performing and add more towards digitalization. So, sir, how will it make sense over, we expanding a couple of new branches? So I just wanted to know a strategy of yours on this part.
Yeah, branches are very light. Specifically, I mean, the operating cost, largely speaking, is employees, right? I mean, the branch rent and the capex that goes into a branch is not very, very high. In fact, we shut down branches or combine branches and stuff all the time. You are right. The new buzzword is digital, fintech, AI, machine learning, all of that stuff. Whenever, of course, we are very much technologically driven. We continue to expand on technology. Right now, we have a project running for MSME and two-wheeler to convert it completely into a digital-driven, paperless, all the other fancy terms you want to add behind that. We are going towards that. Microfinance, we had about a 1.5 year project to convert it into mobile-based, cloud-based kind of driven. But largely speaking, we are an MFI. We are a microfinance company. We are servicing customers who are not able to go digital. If they were sophisticated enough to, take a loan from their mobile phone and, pay their EMIs through, cashless modes and all that other stuff, frankly speaking, I would be out of a business, right? I mean, my job is to serve the segment who cannot do that. And believe it or not, that is the majority of India. So urban India is different than rural India completely. And, us sitting in Bombay or in Ahmedabad or in all the metro cities, it's largely, it's a different world altogether. So I don't see that as much of a threat, as I said earlier. But yeah, digital is obviously there, but frankly speaking, the fintech term has become quite a big buzz. I have studied a lot of fintechs. I mean, at most the companies coming up are fintechish. A true fintech I have not seen yet, at least not a successful model yet. But anyway, I'll hold my further comments on that.
Sure, sir. Thanks for a well-detailed answer, sir. So now coming towards provisions, so currently just looking at our provisions, are the current provisions sufficient for write-off in near future, or are you planning to increase the provisions going forward?
No, as I answered Amit also, I think the tendency was for the provisions to be quite high for the last 6 odd quarters. This quarter they have come down. I cannot exactly tell you what the future will look like, except to say that I strongly expect it to trend downwards. So provision, but I mean, obviously I would be completely remiss if I said that we are done and dusted, and obviously it's not going to be zero, but it will be lower and will continue to get lower as time goes on.
Understood, sir. So lastly, on the industry front, sir, as I had heard recently that we were eyeing that the retail loans can go bad in this cycle of NPA. So, sir, just wanted a ground check from you, like you being into business. How do you see this kind of portfolios, or are they doing good? The payments and repayments and all are good as of now, right?
Well, probably, a lot of people on this call will have a better answer than I do. Largely speaking, the loans that I have made post-COVID, that is when I started disbursements again in August or September of 2020, about a year ago, those are behaving extremely well, surprisingly even better than I expected. But we were very picky, so we tightened the underwriting. As I said, only people who are absolutely clean, we gave out loans to them. So we sacrificed disbursement in exchange of trying to build a better quality. So far it has seemed to work. I don't know if it was overkill or not or anything. It's early to comment. We are not facing any large issue like that. I would say the worst is behind. The first lockdown was bad. The second lockdown was in some ways shorter, but in other ways worse than the first lockdown because of the heavy human casualties and other sicknesses and all that other stuff. But I'm ready to be done and move forward, and everybody in this room is kind of ready to move forward. So let's hope at least that the worst is behind us.
Sure, sir. Thank you for answering my questions. If I have further questions, I'll join the queue, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of V. Srinath from Bellwether Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, Alok. Just want an update on, want to understand our growth momentum, or what are we looking at in the MSME space? And also want to understand if MSME is also on incremental loans post first wave at 99% collections.
So the second answer is easier to answer, which is yes. That is also behaving about the same. I think that is at 98.8%, so about almost 99% in the MSME side. As far as the growth is concerned, see, I think my answer is pretty similar to what I gave with the first question I got. I'm committed to grow it out. We have tightened the underwriting norms. It seemed that the disbursement pickup has been a lot slower than it has been in the micro, and it's always been the case because it takes the right kind of customer to disperse in the MSME side. But we are planning to open some branches. We are probably going to not step back completely from the tighter underwriting, but maybe meet it halfway. And I expect the disbursements to pick up by at least 30 to 40% in the coming couple of quarters. Few branches in Rajasthan
already come up.
Yeah, so few branches in Rajasthan we have already opened as kind of a test. Those are doing well. Overall, collection causes a huge amount of distraction also on the field. So MSME, as you know, is also a door-to-door collection. So is the MFI, and I don't know. I don't have any better answer to give you about the growth side, except to say.
No, here I just on the growth side, just want to understand because you've tightened the norms, rejection rates have gone up, or lead pipeline itself is not filling up because they're maybe not business opportunities on the other side, because the disbursement trajectory in MFI has been significantly better.
Yeah. So it's a combination of couple of factors. One is the rejection rate is quite high, so almost 70% plus is the rejection rate. The pipeline also is kind of slower to come in, and that has to do with your branch efficiency. When they're spending a lot of time on the collection aspects, obviously the time which they can spend on generating leads becomes lower. So it's a combination of a lot of different things. But again, in the fourth quarter, we are going to, we managed solve. I don't want to say solve, but we have managed improving the disbursements of microfinance by quite a bit in this quarter. I think next quarter we'll concentrate on the MSME side and work out all the whatever kinks there are there on the disbursement aspect.
Perfect. On the two-wheeler, the 42 crore book, now what would be the size of the rural two-wheeler here? And I'm guessing the 11 crore disbursements are largely in the rural two-wheeler space?
The rural two-wheeler is almost 25%, about 10 crores there. And in terms of the disbursements, I think that will be again in the same ratio of 75-25%.
Got it. And how do we see this business kind of going forward in the sense of are we looking to build the rural two-wheeler book over a period of time to 50, 60 crores? Is there an opportunity or depth of opportunity there, or are we looking to kind of slowly get this division wound down over a period of time?
No, there definitely is a desire to do that. As you said, right before COVID, we kind of started it as a pilot, if you recall. Grew that book. But due to whatever COVID disruptions were there, it created so many distractions for other stuff that these kind of pilot projects were left in the sideline. As we continue our growth and as we continue getting out of this COVID-related disruptions, I think there is room for other products also. So hopefully we'll be picking up the rural two-wheeler through our MSME branches and also maybe higher ticket loans on that side as well. So my guess is that at least over the long run, you'll see a lot of product innovation on that division.
Perfect. Just the last one is these branch expansions we are having. Any kind of broad geographical feel you can give, as in which are the states you're looking to expand and what's working for you?
So a lot of areas in UP we are considering Bihar as maybe another geography. Certain areas of Bihar as another geography to expand. Not going to expand in Maharashtra or largely speaking in MP. Maybe a few branches more in Haryana and Rajasthan. But again, we have a huge list of areas to consider. And I am not an expert. I think my field people are better experts. But usually, as I said, we have a management retreat where a large portion is discussing, the areas of expansion and where the opportunities lie. So once we get those, we'll do surveys. We'll get reports from the credit bureaus of how that behavior has been. Largely speaking, a lot of those reports will not give a true picture because, the high mark reports, exactly. So, but because of the COVID-related overdues and stuff, it will be very difficult to kind of assess the numbers exactly. So you'll have to use a combination of numbers and experience to kind of narrow the list down.
Cool. Thanks, Alok. I'll get back into the question queue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Balakrishna Vagasia from Axanoun Investments. Please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Yes, as you mentioned earlier that collection efficiency of post-COVID loan book is 99%. So I wanted to understand this post-COVID loan book is the post-first wave or post-second wave?
Post-first wave. So starting from August 2020.
Okay. And my second question is related to consolidated P&L, where in other costs there is almost everything is same except two things. Credit cost and the other cost. You have increment of around 3 crore. Earlier it was around 2.5 and now it is 5.5. So can you throw some light on the attributes of those increment? What does it relates to or something like that?
I think you're talking about what the other year versus half year or other expenses?
Quarter on quarter.
So Q2 FY21 provisions and write-off were 18.6 and this quarter it is 8.7. So there's a 54% reduction, correct? Or am I looking at the wrong?
No. I think what he's asking was for the other expenses, which
other
have moved to 5.5 CR from 31 CR. So primarily, if I can address that, when you're looking at H1 2020, there had been literally no disbursements during that 6-month period. So your credit cost, in the sense of credit bureau cost, the disbursement cost, the travel and conveyance kind of expenses were very low. As compared to that, FY22 quarter 2 has been largely business as usual kind of a quarter, and hence these costs have come into play again.
Correct. So it's directly related to
the
disbursement cost.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Debashish Neogi from Digitization Investments. Please go ahead.
Hi, Alok.
Hi.
Alok, your answer to the previous question of Amit, I just want to get it right. The provision is 6.8% of AUM, and already write-off of COVID loans has been 3.5%. So 3.5% has been written off, and 6.8 is the provision.
6.8 is the total provisioning. Out of that NPA provision, so we are under ECL now. So under ECL, the NPA provisioning will be what, about 4%?
NPA is about 40%, 40 crores. 40 is approximately the NPA provision out of the 62 crores in absolute numbers.
Right.
Okay.
So that's where I think the difference will be there.
Yeah. Okay. The second question, Alok, is given I'm asking this question as a industry a player, given that you are grounded, you work in the market, and you know what is happening around. This 92% collection efficiency optically appears low, but when you compare other players, maybe against other players, most of the players, we are better off. But there are some who are reporting much better than 92% collection efficiency. For example, Credit Access Grameen is reporting 94, 98%, the way their presentation shows. So there would be some who are reporting much higher. So the disparity is too large. So what do you think the reason for this? Is it the way they are, or some of the players are treating the NPS, what has been provided for is out of collection efficiency?
No, you're absolutely right, and that is a bit of an anomaly. A couple of things that I don't have an exact answer. Couple of things I can add, and then maybe Vivek can give his opinion as well. It depends on how fast you are growing, so you can have a denominator effect there. B, if your strategy is doing top-offs or net-off loans, that might have some bit of an impact. C, you could be doing restructuring. D, there is no standardized way to calculate collection efficiency rates, and in fact, I don't particularly care for it as well. This is, the first time people have started using it post-COVID. I think even in Demon, there was not a big concentration on collection efficiencies, because a lot depends on the tenure of your loans and how quickly maybe they might be contractually the loan might be over, but there still might be an overdue and stuff. So I don't know, yaar. I'm not sure. I think maybe a better comparison would be looking at PAR numbers or NPA numbers and stuff like that. Because it could be also that people, once you provide for an asset, then maybe they don't include it in collection efficiency as well. Vivek, anything?
No, largely, look, I think you've covered majority of the variables that could be taken into account for, calculating a collection efficiency for any organization. Additionally, we've also seen that within the NBFC space, there have been various different methodologies for providing moratorium or restructures. So there are organizations which have moved on to only interest recoveries. So as long as the interest recovery has happened, they've kind of taken it as 100% collection efficiency.
Some have restructured where given moratorium March 2022. It is very much, it's actually quite anomalous also. I mean, I'm not going to name any competitors, but there are competitors who are reporting worst collection rates doing better than me. There are ones that are reporting better NPAs, better collection efficiencies, but reporting huge losses. So you guys will know those much better than me. I think collection efficiency can be whatever you want it to be if you are really motivated. There's no set formula. There's no RBI formula or anything like that. So.
And if you have to break the collection efficiency of ours between the regions, is it Maharashtra still which is bringing it down?
I think your voice is not clear. Say that again.
What I'm saying is, Alok, if you have to break the collection efficiency between states, is it still the Maharashtra because of the...
Yeah, Maharashtra will be the worst. Correct. Maharashtra will be the worst, followed by Madhya Pradesh, followed by... which one will it be?
Gujarat to certain extent. Rajasthan has always been consistent, but Rajasthan got impacted in the second wave. They're back to their pre-second wave kind of collection efficiencies.
So ranking from worst to best would be Maharashtra, then MP, then
Eastern UP for that matter, if you can tell.
Yeah, but UP is doing the best.
But UP, Western UP and
Eastern UP is worst. Then Haryana would be the best with 100% collection, but we just went into there. So.
How much is Maharashtra now? Is the trend improving? How is it now?
So Maharashtra is actually the one pulling us all the way down. So it's about 84%. Otherwise, every other state is much more than 90%.
Okay. And you see Maharashtra moving up in terms of as a trend?
It's moving up by about couple of percentage points every month. But we are not dispersing a lot there. So there is not a lot of new portfolio to kind of offset the bad portfolio.
Largely, Devashish, if we can address the Maharashtra side, what happens is when we went into COVID, Maharashtra was about 22% of the portfolio. Today it stands at 15%, and in terms of disbursements, accounts for about 10% only. So largely the Maharashtra impact will keep on diminishing, and hopefully if the collection efficiency can keep on improving over a period of time, that will add up to the overall.
Right. No, Maharashtra has been a bit of a thorn in our foot for some time. If we could reverse time, and I don't remember who decided to go into Maharashtra. Most likely it was myself, but I deserve a big kick in the back for that one.
It happens in business. Ups and downs happen. Thank you, Alok. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Chen Bhai, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, you may press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Sumit Goenka from M3 Investments. Please go ahead. Mr. Sumit Goenka, your line is in talk. Please go ahead with your question. Mr. Goenka, please unmute your line from your side if muted. As there is no response from the current participant, we'll move on to the next question from the line of Ninath Subnis from Subnis Financials. Please go ahead. Ninath Subnis, your line is in talk mode. Please go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Hi, good evening. Sorry for the delay. Yeah, thanks for taking my question. I have a question around disbursements. I've seen over the last few quarters, the trend is actually improving. And so what is the current plan to expand the branch network? And how does the disbursement level increase with the increasing number of branches? And for FY22, what will be the closing branch count?
FY22 closing branches will be, I think, 291. As far as the branch expansion, I think I'll give the same answer as I gave earlier, that we are not sure exactly. We have kind of a figure in mind of about 40 branches in microfinance. In MSME, it might be more, but we have not decided that, so we'll take it up after this planning is complete. And as far as disbursements goes, it will not add a lot. See, opening branches, there's a lead time of about 3 to 6 months. So once you open a branch, it takes like about 3 months for it to start adding to your disbursement. Otherwise, in the initial first month or two, it might be only some 10 lakh rupees or 15 lakh rupees. So this is more planning towards FY23 than anything else. But this year also disbursements are improving month on month. I think last month we did about 100 odd crores taken all together on a console basis. And every month we are increasing it by about 5 odd %. So I think will be very close to 1,000 crore, if not this month, next month from an AUM side. So yeah, that will be a kind of a big milestone for us.
Great. Just a follow-up, a very broad macro type of a question. We see that inflation across most industries is already up, and even on the retail side, it's bound to increase maybe over the next few quarters. So in the customer segment which we are in, so do we see or foresee rather that we may have more dispersal rate, faster dispersal growth because of one factor?
Because of?
Because of inflation affecting a lot of people.
Inflation. So you mean as far as the ticket sizes go?
Yeah.
I don't expect ticket sizes to increase at least for us for at least another 9 to 12 months. So we have already increased the ticket sizes enough. We'll take it up again in maybe the second or third quarter of next year.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's all from my side. Always a pleasure to listening to all your answers and this call. Please keep up the great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of V. Srinath from Bellwether Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi guys, just 2 hygiene questions. One is, could you give the state-wise breakup of AUM, the percentages, so that we can understand how that's moving? And the second question would be, out of the 908 crores of assets that we have, how much of that is originated post-COVID and pre-COVID, so that we'd be able to segregate the good and the bad book?
Vivek, you have the geography.
Yeah, geographically, I probably might give you a segment-wise answer. So for microfinance, between Gujarat is 27%, MP will be about 24%, UP and Uttarakhand kind of add up to another 21-22%. Rajasthan has now grown to almost 10%. Maharashtra has fallen to 15%. So that kind of adds up to the entire cake. And Haryana has just started, so it's about 3% now. In terms of the two-wheeler, it's completely Gujarat book. There is, it's completely Gujarat-centric. As far as the MSME book is concerned, about 85% is in Gujarat. 80% is in Gujarat, about 15 in MP. And the balance kind of spread between Maharashtra, 4 branches, and a couple of branches that we just started in Rajasthan.
Got it. And the good and the bad book?
The pre and post.
So about 60% is in microfinance is in the post-COVID book. About 40, I don't know the other ones on top of my head. But I know about 60% is that. But that will not match up with the collection efficiencies because the demand of the new and old will be different than the portfolios, right? Because the EMIs will be the same, but the portfolio of the newer originated loan will be higher than the older originated loan.
Got it. That's the runoff, yeah. So 60% of the assets, at least in MFI, would be coming from post-COVID disbursements.
Correct.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Manish from Hansraj Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi. Good evening, sir. Thanks for taking my question and congrats for good set of numbers. I would like to know that are we having some digital strategies to reach out to new customers or any developments which we are doing in digital field?
Yeah, so in microfinance, we just finished the conversion, or not just, but it's been like about a year. So that has worked out quite well. Obviously, there is some tinkering going on month-to-month mini projects. In the SME and a project going on right now, converting our legacy software into a newer one. I think you can look forward to it probably next quarter. We'll probably put it in the presentation or what exactly we are trying to do. But again, it's LMS, LOS system, paperless and with geotagging and that we are trying the efficiency and the data decision process. I think in the SME, a lot of future decisions will be based on things like what occupations and what areas and stuff that they're in. So it's important to start collecting all of that data to, in the future start making those, relying more on the numbers rather than your field intelligence or field people's experience goes. So that we are doing right now. As far as reaching out to the customers via digital mode, we don't have anything in the works right now. If there is some opportunity there in the future, we'll be happy to take it up. But as I keep saying, we are serving basically the rural households. They are not. We are basically serving people who are not dependent on digital or might be even illiterate in many cases. So it's not our target segment.
Okay, that's great to know, sir. That's it by my side. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Deepak Mehta, individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, sir. Sir, my question is around the disbursement and around the underwriting. So post-pandemic, have we made any changes in the underwriting, and are we prudent on the side that maybe XYZ, the person has taken loan from another NBFC or bank and he is trying to take more loan from our company for that loan? Hope you are getting my point, sir.
So you are talking about evergreening.
Evergreening in the sense the loan taker want to do it, so not the company.
He is asking in order for him to pay one loan, he has borrowed from the another MFI.
That does tend to happen. I mean,
largely what happens, Mr. Mehta, is that the Highmark would anyway give you the lending details from other borrowers. So if we are tending to be the third or the fourth lender, we are anyway, those cases go reject.
Yeah.
So that likely, I mean, as Alok Bhai just said, yes, that would be happening in the marketplace. You cannot deny that. But the system is kind of enabled over the years, and the team is enabled to kind of weed such customers out to the maximum extent possible through the process itself.
Well, many people, see, there are no working capital loans available to these customers to begin with. So basically, rolling over term loans would be the only way that they would get working capital as well. So it does, I'm sure it does tend to happen, but I don't think it's a large enough problem where it's affecting our repayment rates or things like that. Of course, you'll have those few bad apples. But mostly in the industry also, it's very unlikely that somebody is going to take a loan from me and prepay another person, you know. Once the cash goes in their account or in their pocket, you know, that gets mixed with everything else. So are they using some of that cash to repay their other borrowers? Yeah, of course. But so do we do that as well.
But then again, Alok, we must draw the attention to the fact that there is a limit that set by the Reserve Bank of India, and till that limit he can definitely borrow, and from that borrowing he can take care of the another MFI as long as he doesn't exceed his limit, which is set by the Reserve Bank.
Correct.
Which is 1.25 lakhs as of now.
Correct.
Per borrower.
Okay, sir, 1.25 lakh.
And but that is from all the lenders.
From all the MFIs.
So that's why our maximum loan ticket size in microfinance is just 50,000.
That too is very rare.
That too is very rare to the fourth kind of cycle plus customer.
To add more complication to this answer is that this 1.25 lakh might go away soon with the new RBI circular to harmonize the microfinance practitioners. What they are talking about is shifting from a overall debt cap to an FOIR. You know, so anyway, not going into too many details, but yeah, stay tuned for that change as well.
Yeah, got it, sir. Thanks for the clarification. And my last question is around do you see in the near coming quarters the cost of capital is going down for our company?
Cost of borrowing?
Yes, cost of borrowing. Yeah,
it has gone down significantly. So I think Vivek will add more, but I don't think it will probably continue to go down.
Right.
With all the cheap funding available, you know, that RBI was pumping due to COVID, I think it is probably as cheap as it gets right now. If anything, it will remain stable or maybe go up a little higher in the short to medium term.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. The cost of funding has definitely come down in the last 18 months. But I think to a large extent it will bottom out because the benefits or goodies that government was to offer has already come into play in the last 18 months, and we don't see that going down any further from here.
The thing is also that whatever benefit we get from cost of borrowing by RBI law, we have to pass it on to our customers anyway.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, I mean, of course, that is always an endeavor to reduce the cost of borrowing or increasing it. But to a reasonable extent, we can pass it on or are forced to pass on any increases or decreases that we manage through reduction or cost of borrowing.
Okay. So I think right now the margin should be not more than 10%, right, sir?
That's for microfinance.
That's for microfinance, or 2.75x the average base rate of the top 5 PSU banks.
Okay. So we can assume that our company has reached the optimum level of the cost of borrowing, so it should not be going below this rate. Right, sir?
I mean, in the short term, I don't want to say that. Yeah,
definitely,
I don't want to say that. I mean, the endeavor will always be to reduce it, and I think as we keep growing and the ratings keep increasing and all the other stuff, I think I don't want to say that this is the lowest it will get, but given where we are today, I think it is. I think Vivek and his team has done a great job of reducing it as much as possible.
Additionally, as Jayendra just pointed out, the grading upgrade has just happened. So rating upgrade will surely help us in some or the other way as we move forward in the next couple of quarters. Because that's what rating is supposed to do, and that's what the differentiator largely is between the A and the B category companies. So that should definitely help us. And
yes, sir. This is why I asked this question, because of re-rating, so credit rating agency. So thank you for honest answer and straightforward answer, and best of luck for the coming quarters. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think last question probably.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
As always, we have no closing comments. Hopefully everybody had an enjoyable Diwali and a good break with family. And I guess it's back to work for all of us. Take care and have a great evening.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Emkay Global Financial Services, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.
Thank you.
Thank you.